Hi, I'm Diana from Threes Physio Yoga, here today to talk about core compensations in this core foundations class. What is a core compensation? It's any time one muscle group takes over to do the role of the core more than the rest of the core. For example, if you're doing a plank pose and your low back muscles are really working hard, like all you feel is your low back. Or if you're doing a boat pose or leg lifts and your hip flexors are creaky and crying and just pooped. Those would be examples of compensations, when those muscle groups are doing a lot more work than the rest of the core team. And so in order to understand that, we really need to understand what the core is, how it works, how to regress or make easier those poses, and then how to build the core back up through this mind-body breath model that we've prescribed for you. So what's the core? It's the area really between the rib cage and the pelvis and everything in it. So at the base of the ribs is our respiratory diaphragm. That's the top of the core. The bottom is the pelvic floor. It's at the base of our pelvis. And then the middle of the core is basically everything in the middle. So all of our deep abdominal and superficial abdominal muscles. Deep abdominal muscles are the transverse abdominis, the multifidus, which are these tiny muscles in our spine, and then the superficial muscles in our core are really the rectus abdominis, which are the six-pack muscles, the obliques, the erector spinae, the hip flexors. All of them should work together as a team in exercises like plank and boat pose so that you really feel the whole area working together, not just your back or your hip flexors. That's the goal. And so how do we get this going? Well, one way we can do it is to just make easier those poses. That's the simplest way to start to attend to this problem. I'm going to show you a way to regress plank pose and a way to regress boat pose. And then from there, we'll start to build up the core. Okay, so if I'm in a plank pose, and I'm working and I'm holding it, but I start to feel this like icky, grippy, grabby feeling in my low back, I would tell anybody to lower their knees to the ground and see if you can activate, give a little bit of awareness to your core, maybe by pulling your lower belly away from your underpants and knitting your ribs. See if that, by decreasing the lever, by lowering your legs, see if by making it easier, it's easier for you to let your back muscles go so that your core, your whole core can work better. That's an example of how to make plank easier. What about trying to make boat pose easier? Boat pose is very difficult. So I'm sitting and I'm going to bring myself into boat and I'm going to try to straighten my legs as much as I can, right? And by doing so, it's a lot. It's a ton of hip flexor work. Please make it easier if you're feeling that. Press your hands down behind you. By leaning some of your body weight into your arms, you take some of the load away from your core. Then maybe you can activate your core more deeply, more fully, that whole team. If that's not enough, always lower one leg to the ground. I like doing it this way because then I can really straighten my other leg. And there's no shame in regressing it so you can get a better core contraction. That's really a smart way to move. So try those regressed options for those two poses if your core isn't working well as a team. So let's talk about how we'll do that. Come onto your back. Okay, so now that you're on your back, let's find out how to stack our bones. Imagine your pelvis is a clock face, and that 12 o'clock is up by your belly button, and 6 o'clock is down by your pubic bone, that hard bone at the base of your pelvis. And then imagine that I place a marble at the center of your pubic bone, or at the center of your pelvis, and that you can roll that marble back to your belly button. And as you roll that marble back to your belly button, your low back might flatten against the mat. It's almost like a cat spine. And then can you roll that marble by moving your pelvis forward so that you roll the marble to 6 o'clock? And now it's like kind of like a cow spine. So now there's a bit more space between your low back and the mat, like an arch in your spine. Let's do that again. Take the marble and roll it to 6 o'clock. Flatten out your low back, tuck your pelvis under, almost like a cat spine on your back. And then roll the marble to 6 o'clock. Baby back bend, cow spine, arch in your spine. Now as we roll our marble back to that 12 o'clock position, I want you to think about how you're moving your pelvis. I want you to think about, could you pull your lower abdominal wall away from your underpants? Could you use that feeling to be the initiator to roll the pelvis back to that mini cat, to that marble back to 12? And by doing that, can you make sure that nothing else is doing that? Meaning, can you make sure you're not squeezing your butt or pressing your feet down to tilt your pelvis back? All right, let that go. Roll the marble back to 6. Let's try it again. Lower abdominals, pull away from underpants. Use those muscles right here to roll the pelvis back to that cat spine. Check in with your butt. I'll sometimes just reach down and feel and to see if I'm gripping in my butt. Check in, make sure you're not pressing down with your legs. So right now you should feel some good abdominal work. And then we'll slowly roll that marble again to 6 o'clock. So now we've found some lower abdominal work and how it can help move our pelvis. Now I want to play around with what your neutral is. So we move the pelvis all the way to 6 and all the way to 12. Somewhere in the middle in there is your neutral spine, meaning the place where it feels most easeful, most comfortable for you to be in, where you're not gripping your hip flexors, where you're not gripping your back muscles. Everything is just kind of chill. Once you find that place, we're going to do that lower abdominal from underpants again. Now but when you do your lower abdominals from underpants, I want you to keep the pelvis in the position it's in, not press it back to 12 o'clock. Don't flatten your low back. Pull the lower abdominals away from your underpants. And don't flatten your low back. And I like doing core exercises in neutral because neutral is how we live. We don't always live with our back pressed flat against the mat, especially when we're doing things like walking and lifting things and running. So try to activate your core in neutral. Low belly, away from underpants, neutral spine, no butt. Now, next layer. We stack the bones. We're using our brain now to connect to our abdominals. Next layer is the breath. Take your hands to your rib cage. Start to breathe into your rib cage 360 degrees, expanding the front, the sides, and the back of your ribs. On an inhale. And slowly exhale. We're going to do that 2 more times. Still some lower abdominal work. Not a ton, but you can do a little bit. Breathe in, expand your ribs, front, back, and sides. Exhale, let it go. One more breath like that. Inhale, expand your ribs, front, back, and sides. It's called a 360-degree breath. And now you'll exhale. And on your exhale, I want you to think about pulling the 2 fronts of your ribs together, like you could knit them together. There's a space right in between your rib cages, like a little inverted V. Put your hand there. You can feel tension there as you squeeze, try to squeeze those 2 parts of your ribs together. Again, please don't flatten your back against the mat. Keep your neutral. As you're squeezing those ribs, pull the lower abdominals away from the underpants. Two parts of the core working together now. And the work here is to hold both without holding tension in your jaw or your neck or your shoulders, your back or your hips. Feels like a lot. Be easy on yourself. See if you can hold that tension. Keep thinking about what you're doing. Keep staying in neutral. You might take shallower breaths by doing it, and that's okay. And then just let it go. And we'll do that one more time. You're in your neutral. Start by pulling your lower abdominals away from your underpants. Inhale, 360-degree breath. And then exhale, just knit those ribs together. Pull the fronts of your ribs together without flattening your spine, without over gripping your neck, jaw, shoulders, butt. And hold for 5 breaths. And if they're shallow breaths, it's okay, you're still breathing. And that's step 1 to rebuilding your core from the inside out. Remember, we did regressed versions of plank and boat. We did neutral pelvis through pelvic clocks, and then we added on 360-degree breath, and then we integrated the core. Good luck. Try it frequently. Thank you so much.